Have you ever looked at an old photograph and felt like it was alive? Not just a memory frozen in time, but a piece of your soul staring back at you, whispering something you couldn't quite hear. Most people dismiss that feeling. But for Thomas, it became the beginning of the strangest, most terrifying journey of his life. It all started on his 60th birthday. His family had gathered in his quiet home. His daughter, his granddaughter, a few close friends. There was cake, laughter, and the usual jokes about turning old. But among the presents on the table, one stood out. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with a thin red ribbon. His granddaughter, Lily, handed it to him with a grin. "You'll like this one, Grandpa," she said. Thomas carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a photo album, its leather cover worn but polished as though it had been carefully restored. "I found the negatives in Grandma's attic," Lily explained. "I had them developed and fixed up. It's your life, Grandpa. All your best moments." Touched, Thomas opened the first page. There he was, a baby wrapped in a blanket, his young parents smiling with pride. He turned another page, saw himself as a boy on his first bicycle, his teenage years, his high school graduation. Each page was filled with crystal clear moments, carefully captured. But then, something made his breath catch. A particular photograph, one he remembered vaguely but hadn't seen in decades. It was him, 18 years old, standing on a street corner downtown. He recalled the day. It was summer, he had just finished school, and he was waiting for friends. But in the background of that picture was something wrong. There, standing half in the shadow of a building, was a man. Not just any man, but a man who looked exactly like him. Same posture, same scar on the chin. The only difference was the age. This man wasn't 18. He was older, middle-aged, worn down by life. Thomas's heart thudded. "What the hell?" he whispered. He held the picture closer. His hands shook. His daughter laughed from across the room, assuming he was just being sentimental. "Dad, are you crying already? We've barely started," she joked. But Thomas wasn't laughing. He closed the album quickly, unable to shake the image from his mind. That night he couldn't sleep. The album lay on the nightstand, pulling at his thoughts. Finally, at midnight he gave in. He opened to that photograph again, and as he stared, something impossible happened. The surface of the photo rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. The air grew cold, his lamp flickered. Before he could cry out, the world tilted violently, and he was gone. When he opened his eyes, the air smelled different, fresher, with hints of summer heat and gasoline. Around him was the same downtown street from decades ago. Old cars rolled past, neon signs flickered. He looked at his reflection in a shop window. His face was young again. No wrinkles, no gray hair. He was 18. At first he thought he was dreaming, but then he saw him, his other self, the boy he had been, laughing, carefree, leaning against the lamppost, waiting for his friends. Thomas's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to run to him, to shout warnings. "Don't fight with your father. Don't ignore that girl who truly loves you. Don't take the job that will ruin your health." But as he stepped forward, the photograph in his hand burned hot, and the world around him flickered like a broken film reel. He understood. He could watch, but not interfere. And yet, temptation is a cruel thing. The next night it happened again. Another photograph, another memory. This time it was his wedding day. The church bells, the nervous smiles, the vows he had once spoken. He stood at the back, invisible, watching himself promise forever. His heart ached because he remembered what came after. The arguments, the distance, the eventual separation. A voice whispered in his mind, "You can change it." He tried to resist. For days he traveled through the photographs. The birth of his daughter, the funeral of his mother, the milestones and mistakes of a lifetime. Each memory felt like a knife twisting in his chest. Each one begged him to intervene. And finally he broke. On his wedding photo, he stepped forward. He spoke. His younger bride, startled, turned toward him. And in that instant, the world shattered. Suddenly, he wasn't invisible anymore. He was part of the memory. He convinced her not to leave, not to doubt him. In that new version of reality, they stayed together. He had rewritten his story. When he returned to the present, his heart soared, until he noticed what was missing. His daughter, she no longer existed. Without the separation, she had never been born. His granddaughter, Lily, gone. Thomas screamed into the empty house. The photo album lay open, its once filled pages now blank, as though consumed by his choice. He realized with horror that the album wasn't just showing him memories. It was feeding on them. Every change he made devoured the future. But he couldn't stop. He tried again and again, saving his mother from her illness, preventing his father from leaving, protecting friends from accidents. Each time he returned to a present twisted and wrong, filled with absences, people missing, entire lives erased. The album pulsed with hunger, its blank pages spreading. Finally, only one photograph remained, the very first one, his childhood home, with his parents smiling beside him. The page glowed, pulsing with light. Thomas stood trembling. He knew the truth now. This was the last chance. If he entered, maybe he could save everyone. Or maybe the future itself would vanish forever. He raised the album, staring at his parents' faces. The temptation was unbearable. His hands shook as tears blurred his vision. He thought of his mistakes, his regrets, his lost loves, his daughter, his granddaughter. He wanted to fix it all, but then he saw it. On the table beside him, outside the album, was a single photograph that hadn't been there before. Lily, his granddaughter, smiling. Thomas understood. The album had tried to take everything, but it couldn't steal the love that existed in the present. The last photograph wasn't inside the cursed book. It was real, living, untouchable. With shaking hands, he closed the album. The leather cover cracked. The pages inside burst into flames. He let it burn until nothing remained but ash. And when the smoke cleared, the world was quiet. His house was still empty, but the photograph of Lily remained. He picked it up, pressed it to his chest, and whispered, "The past is a photograph, but the future is a blank page." For the first time in his life, Thomas smiled without regret.